Free Japan Channel number 24. Today, February 22nd, 2024. Here in Yokohama, the time is 8:30 p.m. So rainy night. It's been raining since yesterday. But here, spring is coming. I can feel it in the landscape of Yokohama. Dear listeners, how are you doing? FJC number 24, today's topic is why Prime Minister Kishida so unpopular. This is the topic of tonight. Now, Mr. Kishida is in the position of Japanese Prime Minister, and he's been in this position for about 2.5 years. So 2.5 years is relatively long compared to other previous prime ministers. Of course, Prime Minister Abe was in the position of prime minister for more than 8 years, but it was a rare exception, and normally a Japanese prime minister's term is about 1.5 year or so. So Kishida's 2.5 years is not so short-lived. However, his problem is the low support rate. Now, Japanese poll says that less than 20% of voters support Kishida's policy. It means rest of 80% does not support his policy. So today's topic, why is Prime Minister Kishida so unpopular among Japanese people? First, the reason lies in the fact that Prime Minister Kishida is considered to be very positive to the tax raise. Japanese people are very sensitive to the issue of consumption tax. Consumption tax is imposed on almost every item we Japanese people buy in the supermarket, for example. So everyone is concerned with the consumption tax. And here, the tax rate is now 10%. The rate was long 3%, but it was raised to 5%, then 8%, and 10%. Consumption tax is the very strong influencer to the Japanese business or Japanese economy, because Japanese consumers don't want to buy items or goods and services if consumption tax is raised. Every time it was raised in the past, Japanese economic growth rate declined. And Prime Minister Kishida is reported that he was a puppet of Japanese financial ministry. And curiously enough, Japanese financial ministry is aiming at raising consumption tax. As I said, consumption tax is composed of the tax which is imposed of almost every items and services. So this tax can be expected to be staple income for the nation, for the national budget. So the fluctuation is not so volatile according to the Japanese financial ministry. when it comes to the consumption tax. So Japanese Financial Ministry says that this consumption tax should be the main tax source for the national budget. However, Japanese people are very afraid of this consumption tax. Even if it is 1% or 2% when it is raised, they are so unwilling. So they become so unwilling to purchase something in the market. Prime Minister Kishida is a politician who is very near to the Ministry of Finance in Japan. So the intention of Ministry of Finance is to raise the tax to stabilize the national budget. Therefore, Mr. Kishida is very unpopular for Japanese people because Japanese people don't want to see their consumption tax raised in the future. Second, Mr. Kishida is a leader of his faction in Japanese political arena. He belongs to Liberal Democratic Party, so majority party in Japanese politics, but his faction, Kishida faction, so to speak, is not so big. Therefore, Kishida cannot exert his influence on the whole LDP as well as in Japanese politics. So he can't make a decisive policy for himself. He always considers other influential politicians' intention before deciding something. He cannot decide by himself. This is a difference between the present Prime Minister Kishida and former Prime Minister Abe. Abe was the leader of Abe faction, and this faction was so big that Abe was so free to cope with various political alternative options. Third, Kishida's son was the secretary of Prime Minister Kishida. This is not the problem. The son is the person who can be trustworthy for Prime Minister. So Kishida can nominate his son as a secretary of his position, but this son took the photo of Japanese Prime Minister residence, and the son gathered his relatives and acquaintances to this residence, and someone took the photo. But this photo shows this son was the center of the red carpet as if he were a prime minister. Of course, other members of that relative groups are composed of young people. So it was a kind of joke, but it was prime minister's residence, and there was no such incident there because it is a very serious place, not for joke or some making fun of. So this son was so severely criticized, and he was laid off by his father. Of course he should be. These reasons accumulated, and the popularity of Prime Minister Kishida is now so low that Japanese politics cannot decide anything impressive at the moment. Kishida is expected to deliver some speech in the US Congress this spring. I'm a bit curious about what he will say to the senators and congressmen of the United States. But as I said, his last term, his term left is not so long, considering this low support rate. Therefore, his speech cannot be so convincing or plausible to the US audience, I'm afraid. The next issue is that who will be elected as a successor of Kishida. And there are some names and persons, but we are not sure who will be the next Prime Minister of Japan. So we should be waiting for the spring political movement here in Japan. Thank you.